Yes.
We've given the
Love
introduction. We did the introduction on Monday. So you guys want to click into the paleontology lab. And the purpose of today is for you guys to start to learn about certain invertebrate fossils. We're going to learn about trilobites and brachiopods and bryozoans and cephalopods and crinoids and horn corals. That's the purpose of today's lab. Now, before I get into that, notice this image of Ohio. This image of Ohio shows you the exposed rock layers. Notice that in the Dayton, Cincinnati area is kind of that pink color. That's the Ordovician layer. Then as you move towards Columbus, it looks like Columbus is in the Devonian layer. So notice the different layers of strata exposed in Ohio. And those layers represent the Paleozoic era. So the Paleozoic era is from the Cambrian, it goes Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, and Permian. If you wonder, what am I talking about? Go back to the geological, I'm talking about the geological record. And you can see the Paleozoic. The Paleozoic includes from about 540 million years ago to 250 million years ago, and it includes these periods: Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, and Permian. Well, as I'll go back to that Ohio picture in just a moment, you'll see that there's no Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, Tertiary, and Neogene periods in Ohio. There's none of this rock. There's no Mesozoic and there's no Cenozoic era rock in Ohio. The reason for that is because Ohio, what we call Ohio, sat underneath an ocean for 300 million years, accumulating these layers of sediments. And then as the earth shifted and continents moved and things came up from the water, Ohio was brought out of the water. And so once you're out of the water, you're not going to get further sedimentation. So that's why Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, Tertiary, and Neogene periods don't exist in Ohio, because Ohio was brought out of the oceans as a result of changes in the Earth's surface 250 million years ago. And so those layers couldn't be deposited on Ohio. Does that make sense? So if we go back to the image of Ohio, we can see, so what it means for geologists is they can go to various parts of Ohio. Dayton and Cincinnati are famous for the Ordovician period. The Ordovician period was approximately 450 million years ago. And you can get a sample of the life that lived there. In fact, here's something you guys probably don't know. This Ordovician, the rock layers exposed in the Dayton-Cincinnati area for the Ordovician layers are some of the best rock layers exposed for the Ordovician on the entire planet. So when zoologists want to study invertebrate fossils from the Ordovician period, they often come to the Dayton-Cincinnati area. We take this stuff for granted, but that's just the way humans are. They often don't appreciate where they live as well. But you can see that you get Permian. It looks like the Permian period over here in the eastern part of Ohio. So you can go to different parts of Ohio and sample Paleozoic fossils. It's really fascinating. And that's why I love Caesars Creek, because Caesars Creek has the Ordovician rock layers exposed. And it's a great place to find Ordovician fossils. And all of the fossils we're going to discuss today can be found at Caesars Creek. All right, questions about Ohio?
I have a
Where's
question.
Caesar Creek?
What's that?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're saying like we don't have certain periods. We can't find certain periods on Ohio because it was underwater at a time.
Well, we can't find certain periods on Ohio because those sedimentary rock was not formed because Ohio was not underwater during that period.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
not underwater.
Not underwater, yeah. The reason you can find the Paleozoic sediments is because Ohio, what we call Ohio, was underwater collecting those sediments at that time.
Okay.
But the reason you can't find the Mesozoic and Cenozoic layers is because Ohio got moved above the water and the sediments didn't form.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So that's Ohio. Let's begin with our first invertebrate fossil that you guys are going to have to learn. So what are you guys going to have to know? You're going to have to know the information through here, and I'm going to highlight some points. And then you're going to have to identify these fossils by pictures. And you'll note I have a PowerPoint presentation prepared. And when I prepare the lab exam, which I'm going to start probably tonight or tomorrow, I will select images from this PowerPoint. So this is where you guys will want to study. I'll look at those. We'll look at those in a little bit. So that's the gist of this. You guys are going to learn some specific invertebrate fossils. You're going to learn some information about each of them and how to identify them. Let's begin with my favorite, the trilobites. And I will admit an immense disappointment that I don't have you guys here in my lab where I can brag about the fossil discoveries I've had over the past 25 years. I've found some very intriguing fossils that I like to show to you guys and brag about. Unfortunately, my wife has done better than I have. So a lot of the fossils that are in this lab, I've collected. Most of them I've collected, but I've collected them with her, and she has a tendency to find even better stuff than me. But it's just a joy to show you guys my fossils, and we won't be doing that. Let's take a look at trilobites. Here's the theme. You guys are going to have to know the term trilobite. You're going to have to know the phylum that it's located in. You're going to have to know current day organisms that it's related to. That's a theme. And you're going to have to identify pictures of them. So I'm going to give you information here, additional information, but at the minimum, you're going to have to know the common name for it, trilobite. You'll have to know the phylum name, Arthropoda. You're going to have to know who they're related to. It'll tell you in here. They're related to crabs right through here. Can you see, do you see that purple color?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right, can you guys see that? So they're related to crabs and centipedes and spiders and shrimps and insects. And you have to be able to identify pictures of them. That's going to be the theme. So when we discussed the geological period, I mentioned that trilobites came onto the planet 550 million years ago. And they lived for about 300 million years, and they died out 250 million years ago as a result of a mass extinction event called the Permian-Triassic extinction. Don't worry about that name right now. You guys are going to learn all about that eventually, the Permian-Triassic extinction. It occurred between the Permian and the Triassic periods. That's why it's called the Permian-Triassic extinction, or sometimes just called the PT extinction. So why do I love trilobites and love to hunt for them? Because they are tangible proof of evolution. Every time I find one, I have evolution in my hand. So science is different than other philosophies of life in that you can go and test our ideas. If you want to, you can evaluate them yourself. And so why do I find trilobites intriguing? because I can go, if I go to areas of the planet that have 700 million year old rock and look and look and look and look, I don't find trilobites. We think it's because they weren't alive at that point. They had not originated yet. If I go into rock layers that are 150 million years old, we don't find trilobites. We think the reason for that is they were dead. They'd died out, they'd gone extinct. But if I go to Caesar's Creek, which is the Ordovician rock layers that are about 450 million years old. So trilobites live between 550 and 250. Caesar's Creek has rock layers exposed that are 450 million years old. I find trilobites. I find the evidence of evolution. And so that's why trilobites are so intriguing for me. And it's too bad you guys aren't here in the lab, because I have one trilobite that I found that I love very much. And I pretend that it has special powers. And then I pass it around to my students. And if you touch it, you the rest of your life is just going to be wonderful. The power of the placebo, right? We all need our things to motivate us. And mine is looking at this cute little trilobite and pretending it's got special powers. And it's whatever you want to believe, right? Whatever motivates you. Trilobites are arthropods. And here's some examples of arthropods that you guys may know about: the crabs and centipedes and spiders and shrimps and insects. And they're called trilobites because of these three lobes. Look along through here. You got this lobe 1, 2, 3. If you looked at a trilobite, you might think that it kind of looks a little bit like a horseshoe crab. They are related to horseshoe crabs. I'm not sure how closely related they are. I don't know. I don't think they're closely related, but horseshoe crabs are a relative of them, although I don't think it's all that close. But what's intriguing down here, the state fossil for Ohio, where you guys live, is a trilobite from the genus Isotellus. I think I'm pronouncing it right. The state fossil of Ohio is a trilobite. And one of the more famous trilobites that have been found was actually found here in Dayton. I think there was a period of time where the largest trilobite ever found was the one here in Dayton. I think that's changed. I'm pretty sure it's changed. But I still think that this trilobite that was found here in Dayton, if it's not the biggest, it's the second biggest in the world. And there's one out at Caesar's Creek that's very large. And then there's one in the Smithsonian that I think is from Dayton that's very large. So I imagine that may be why the state fossil for Ohio is from the genus Isotellus, a trilobite. So check out this paragraph through here. Trilobites would have eaten things like worms and algae, as well as plankton. They had a tendency sometimes to curl themselves up. You can see a trilobite through here curled up. There's the eyes, the black pointers on the eyes. It's curled up. They had a tendency to curl up to protect themselves. And again, trilobite, they're referring to, so this is the head region here with the eyes, and you can see the three-lobe nature through there. So this is a trilobite that's not curled up.
Is it related to like a kind of like a roly-poly?
Well, though I don't know that, I don't think closely, but yes, I mean, roly-polies would be in the phylum Arthropoda.
Okay.
Right? But remember, on our taxonomic, eventually you guys are going to do the taxonomic story. It goes domain, kingdom, phylum. So a phylum is a pretty broad taxonomic group, right? So are they related roly-polies? Yes. Are they closely related? Unlikely.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. They were scavengers for food and they were predators. So a scavenger is one that will eat things that is already dead and maybe somebody else killed something and left some remains. Predators will actively seek out living things and eat them. So they were both scavengers and predators and fed on worms and algae and plankton. Let's take a look at,
Question, Professor.
yes,
We have to know the extinction and first appear date for the
that would be
invertebrates.
good. Yeah, that would be good. I've said that several times, and that's something that's tied into your geological record chart. You have to know that from the geological record anyway.
All right, thanks.
So let's look at some trilobite images. These first ones are a bunch of stuff. Let me get to the trilobites. There's a trilobite right there, right? There's a nice trilobite image. Here's a rolled up trilobite. The black pointer's on its eyes. That's its face. Here's its tail end. It's rolled up and curled up. That's not a trilobite. Let's get to, oh, here we go. There's a trilobite. Again, there are the eyes. 3 lobes. Here's a trilobite. Here's one that's curled up on the side. Its eyes are here. You can see 2 of the lobes through here, but it's curled up there. Here's another one. Here's the eyes again, and it's curled up. So the good news is, on your lab exam, I will select these same images. That's a trilobite curled up. There's one from the side. That's a trilobite there. There's one there. There's another image, the compound eye of the trilobites. Here's a trilobite there. And then one other thing you guys have to do, this first image right there, that's a piece or a fragment of a trilobite. That's an image of a real rock, and that little piece right there is just a section of the exoskeleton of a trilobite. So that's a trilobite fragment. Questions so far?
So you said the phylum, common name, and like
Yeah.
identify pictures, and then we have to know the time of appearance and disappearance.
Yeah, the theme is you got to know the common name, the phylum name, the creatures it's related to,
Okay.
crabs, centipedes, and spiders. If I throw out dates, if you see dates like 550, that would be good. And then you're going to get images. You're going to have to identify these images. The primary focus on the lab exam will be identification of the images, but it's in those images where I will also evaluate some of this information.
Okay.
I will show you an image. Like, for example, I could show you this image right there and say, give you some, and you'd have to pick out some information that's relevant and accurate for a trilobite versus some other invertebrate animal.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
I also have a question.
Yep. And hang on. I don't know exactly how many questions will on the lab exam yet. I'll probably not go more than 50. It'll probably be around 45 to 50 questions. And I bet a good 8 questions, if not maybe 10, maybe, a good 8 questions are going to have images of these fossils. So try to be prepared for that. A good 20% of the test, right? Maybe a little less than 20% of the test will have these images. All right, what's your question?
You already answered it. It was about the questions.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank
you're on the lab exam. I will select these images from here and put them on the lab exam and ask you information about them. So
Sorry.
go ahead.
So the information we're covering today is pretty specific just to the lab exam one.
Correct. Good question. What we covered on Monday, it was both for the lab and for lecture. What we're doing today is just for lab exam 1.
Okay, thanks.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a look at our next invertebrates. Referred to as brachiopods from the phylum Brachiopoda. So we've looked at the trilobites. Let's take a look at the brachiopods. Brachiopods, hang on, let me get a little drink of water here. Brachiopods are found in the phylum Brachiopoda. And when you look at them initially, you're going to say, oh, they're clams. And that is not correct. They have shells that superficially resemble a clam, but they are very different in their anatomy, right through here. Completely different in their anatomy compared to a clam. Clams are in the phylum Mollusca. More on that in a little bit. And brachiopods are in the phylum Brachiopoda. So be careful. They'll superficially, you'll think they're little clams because of the superficial resemblance of the shells that protect these animals. But they're not, besides the fact that they're both animals, they're not closely related to clams at all. They are what we call filter feeders. So what I want to do is I want to show you another image before we go further in this. I want to show you a live image of brachiopods, and it's down here. Lophophorate, I didn't say that right. Lophophorate animals. Lophophorate animals. This is in your textbook, and I just grabbed this picture here. Well, at least unless they change this picture, but you guys have it here. Here's a modern day living brachiopod. So brachiopods are not as diverse as they were in the past. Brachiopods are actually rare today, but they used to be very dominant. They used to be very abundant on this earth in the past, but apparently they're rare today. But here you can see a living brachiopod. Here's its shell right there. And if you look inside of it, it's got this ciliated structure called a lophophore that it uses to feed. So a lophophore is kind of like a crown of tentacles that allows the animal to sweep food into its mouth. And you can see why they call it a crown. It kind of goes down along through here and around this way. And it's got tentacles and allows for the brachiopod to feed. They're described as filter feeders. And they have cilia on the lophophore, cilia that are going to help to move the food to the mouth of the little brachiopod. So we'll see in a little while that our next animal's got a lophophore as well, the bryozoan. The lophophore, being a soft tissue, isn't going to fossilize well, but the shells of these brachiopods do fossilize very well. So here's some images down here of different brachiopods you'd have to do. But again, I'm going to select the brachiopods for the testing purposes. I will select it from this image from the PowerPoint image here. Most of these are fossils, but I do say, hey, one of these pictures is live brachiopods, but the rest of them are actual fossil images. So this first picture is a fragment of a trilobite, as you guys know. And here are some live brachiopods. The black pointers on the lophophore in there. Let's go to some brachiopods. Ah, here's one. That's not one. Right there. That's a brachiopod. Fossilized brachiopod. That's a trilobite. Let's find, bro. There's a brachiopod right there. These are brachiopods right through here. Seeing the pieces of them. So you guys are going to have to take some time. Be careful, because if you just study this rapidly, somebody could confuse this with a piece of the trilobite. You guys with me? You're going to have to be careful. We got a brachiopod there, there, and there. Those are something else we'll talk about later. That's fine. That's something else. That's fine. Those are trilobites. Those are brachiopods, right? Superficially resembling little clamshells, but they're unrelated to clams, or at least they're extremely distantly related to clams. So that's a brachiopod. These are all brachiopods through here, right through there. There's tremendous diversity in the shapes of these shells on these brachiopods. And so these are brachiopods through here as well. There's a brachiopod up close. Here's some brachiopods as well. Now these brachiopods have specific species names, but we're not going to get into that. There's all kinds of classification that you guys could learn about this stuff, but we're going to keep it simple. Phylum Brachiopoda, common name, brachiopods, and we won't get into any genus names or species names. That's not a brachiopod. More on this stuff later. That's not a brachiopod either.
Can we know some of the animals that are related to it now, like descendant from it?
Well, apparently these must be kind of unique, because I don't see that in the, I was looking for that, because that's the pattern. We'll have that for most of these, but in that paragraph, I don't see a reference to that. Do you see that? You guys have to know the information in here, and I don't see a reference to, let's see. Yeah, I don't see a
Yeah, I
reference
didn't
to
see
that.
one.
Yeah. So for this particular animal, you don't have to worry about that. Now, as we're going to see, it's not mentioned here, but our next creature has a lophophore as well. So brachiopods must have some connection to these bryozoans, because they are what we call lophophorate animals because of this feeding structure. So I guess if you wanted to list something that they are related to, you could, it's our next creature called a bryozoan. But notice down here, the fossils of these are sometimes the most common fossils of all fossils. Sometimes you'll find rocks just filled with brachiopods.
Hello.
All right, questions about brachiopods? And what we mean by a filter feeder is one that just kind of lets the ocean come in and bring its food, right? It filters the water for various small particles of food.
It's
Sometimes you'll hear the term suspension feeder. Suspension feeders and filter feeders are the same. Question.
the reef corals, are they related to bryozoans?
Corals
Yeah,
that build reefs.
yeah, with the
Yeah.
calcium carbonate.
Well, they're not closely related, no. As we'll see, we're going to talk about horn corals, and we're going to talk about corals. But you're right, the corals build a calcium carbonate house as well as these guys do. But no, that's independently evolved. They're not closely related. All right. Let's talk about the bryozoans.
I don't know. Oh.
Somebody needs to mute themselves.
Sorry, that was probably me.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, let's look at the bryozoans. Phylum Bryozoa. You can see these are described as moss animals because they are animals that if you were to look at them up close might cause you to think they are moss. But they are animals. Let's go back to the live picture, some bryozoans. Down here, they also have a lophophore. So this image right here is of bryozoans. And the animal is right through here. You can see the lophophore being extended, but these animals are really small and they protect them inside little houses made of calcium carbonate. And what we see is the fossils. When we find bryozoan fossils, we find the little houses that they protect themselves in. So here's the little feeding structure, the lophophore, again, a crown of tentacles that will that are lined with cilia that are used for filter feeding. These bryozoans can be important in reef building. So that's, Chase, you had that question about corals. These bryozoans, some species are important in the formation of reefs. But the little animal is very small. The bryozoan animal is less than 1 millimeter in size and will protect itself inside these calcium carbonate houses. Let's see what images. Well, let's go to the actual images you might be tested on. Let's go here and look for bryozoans. So bryozoans build these little protective homes, and this is a bryozoan right here. In fact, if you the little area right there looks like it's a little indentation, that would be one spot where one little animal would pop out of if this thing was alive. But this is the fossil. What you're looking at here is the fossilized remains of the little house that these bryozoans built to protect themselves. Bryozoans have a variety of shapes, but they often it kind of looks like little finger-like pieces or branches of a tree, maybe. But that's bryozoan. That's a bryozoan right through there. Each one of those little spots right there a little animal would live inside. So that's bryozoan. That's not. We'll come back to those. Not. This is bryozoan. It's what they call the lacy colony arrangement. If we could look closer through here, doesn't that look like, well, that kind of has a tree-like branching pattern, right? but all of these little spots right through here that look like they're twigs or branches of a tree are the calcium carbonate houses the little animals built for themselves. So they come in a variety of shapes, but this is what they call the Lacey colony arrangement. And so back here, that's a bryozoan there, right? And this is bryozoan right through here. This would, if you were to get up close to these, you would see this, that similar little indentation, like little dimples along the surface of it where the little animal lives. So that's bryozoan. That's brachiopod. There's a trilobite. There's a trilobite. Brachiopods. That's something else. We'll do that's something else. This is bryozoan. I put this in here specifically to remind myself of what this is. I'm not good at identifying this fossil. Now I am. I put it in there for you guys to learn and also to force myself to identify what this is. My wife and I were out in Utah, and I probably shouldn't say this story because I wasn't, you're not supposed to take fossils. So I apologize, but I didn't take a lot. I only took maybe 2. One of the fossils and the reason I wanted it, you know, you're out in the natural lands and you're not supposed to take the fossils there. But it's for educational purposes, obviously. But the one that I grabbed, I wanted because I don't have any Permian. I'm pretty sure it was Permian rock. Yeah. And so, you know, I have a lot of Ordovician fossils. Now, Caesar's
I
Creek.
have a question for you. Why are you not allowed to take them?
Well, at Caesar's Creek, you're allowed to take fossils that aren't bigger than the size of your hand. So every natural resource has different rules and policies. Now, I will admit sometimes my hand swells and I take bigger stuff out of Caesar's Creek, but it's for academic purposes. But where we were in the Zion National Forest. I don't know if you can read that. I bought this hat there. And they had rules. They didn't want people disturbing the natural environment. And I understand. And they didn't want people collecting fossils there. So it was a policy that you were not permitted to do so. So as far as you guys understand, I never did that. But somehow I have a Permian fossil. And that's why I put this in here. When I first picked up the fossil, I couldn't identify it. I didn't know what it was. But it was one of these. I should bring it up to you. I should have brought it up here to you. But it's a bryozoan. So I have a fossil that I'm almost certain is from the Permian period. I could be wrong, but and it looks just like this. And initially I could not identify it. Later I would recognize that it was a bryozoan fossil. So yes, so be careful, Washbird. All these natural and different national resources, different places, they have different policies and procedures. And this one didn't allow fossil collecting. Now there are places you can go for fossil collecting out there, but this particular spot, that they had a policy against it. I only took 2, and they were pretty small. I still feel a little guilty about it, but I'll get over it. It's for academic purposes. All right, so this is a bryozoan right there. Now, if we're not seeing it, but if we were to go in more carefully, we would see where the little animal lives. It's hard to see that. You don't see the little bumps and indentations there. All right, that's not a bryozoan. That's not bryozoan. Those those are trilobites. Those are brachiopods. All right. But at some point, I'd like to have fossils from all the geological periods. And now that my wife and I were empty nesters, we've sent 3 kids through college. Our 4th one is there. So 4 children, and 3 of them are done with college. 1 more to finish. We're going to take a little more time. We loved being parents, and we just spent our lives with our children. We didn't go on vacations much. And we certainly, for almost 26 years, we hadn't gone on a vacation, just the 2 of us. We just love to be with our kids. And now our kids are in their 20s, and they'd rather be at a bar having fun than with their parents. And that's okay. We understand that. But now my wife and I are realizing, boy, we can just go and travel. And because of my influence, she's starting to love fossils. And so we will start traveling to different places and fossil hunt. And I'd like to get fossils from all the different geological periods at some point, before I go on to the next phase of whatever happens after death, right?
Excuse me, Professor.
Yes.
At most of the national parks, you can actually get a certificate for 2 days to go fossil hunting.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
I have a couple from my journeys.
Oh, nice. Let me see that. You found that? Huh?
Yeah,
Oh, very good. Where'd you get that?
I got that one at Bryce Canyon.
Nice. Oh, at Bryce Canyon. So
Yeah.
what you're so I see. So there's a way you can get permission to do it for a couple days.
So you have to apply online, and then when you get there, you get your certificate with your dates.
Okay.
And then you have to like show them, and they have to document what all you got before you can
Oh,
leave,
okay.
so that they have like record of like where you got it and what you got,
Okay.
and then you can take it out with you.
Okay.
How
So
much is it?
maybe it's not as illegal as I thought, right?
I don't think so. I think they just want to know what it is and where it came from, and they want to make sure that you're not taking too much sediment out of the space.
Right. Right. You're
and
not
causing
disturbing it
damage.
too much, and they don't want me profiting from it. They don't want geology, right? They don't
Yeah,
want people coming in and selling stuff.
I think they want to make sure that it's like all on the up and up, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you're making me feel better.
Well, and I do know there are a couple where you're not allowed to at all, because there's been so many rocks taken out of the space that they're starting to have damage
Right.
to like larger structures.
Right. Okay.
So like Bryce will give you like a map, and they'll like etch out the spaces that you can't touch because too much has been taken out and there's
Okay.
damage to the hoodoos.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had a great time. We went to Bryce and Zion, and just it was just the 2 of us, no children. And, as I said, we loved our children, but then we were like, whoa, well, maybe we can get used to this. And we would just hike all day long, and then get in a hot tub and have a few drinks and go out to dinner. Did that for a full week. It was a lot of fun, and just beautiful, absolutely beautiful mountains. Just, really a miracle of nature and a miracle of geology.
How much was the certificate?
It depends on the national park itself. The Grand Tetons is the cheapest one that I've ever gotten, at only $15 for a day. And Bryce Canyon was the most expensive because they had to do a background check and do all this other stuff, and that one was $45.
Wow. But
I
you
was
got a
surprised.
nice fish fossil there.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Those things are probably $45 in themselves. All right, let's move on. So we were working on bryozoans, and you can see the different shapes. Often, finger-like colonies, or the lacy colony. I showed you an image of that. Here they're showing you the little animal inside of its. Here's the little calcium carbonate protection, and here's the lophophore popping up to allow the animal to feed. And there's that example of a bryozoan that I didn't identify initially, and now I'm learning. Let's take our next group. of invertebrate animals is from the phylum Echinodermata. They are called crinoids. And this one does list who they're also related to right through here. So phylum Echinodermata, these crinoids are related to starfish. Technically, people want us to start calling them sea stars, but I'm going to continue to call them starfish. I hope not too many people think a starfish is actually a fish, but they're trying to get us to move towards calling them sea stars. They're also related to sand dollars and sea urchins. And what's interesting about this animal is that I've had students think these were plants. And you can see in the name, I don't like to call them sea lilies because the sea lily, I mean, that is one of their names, but you won't hear me use the term. They are animals that if you're not careful, you might confuse them with a plant. But you can see it's a strange animal. It's got these root-like structures. Notice I put parentheses around roots. They're not plant roots, of course. This is an animal. It's got these holdfasts. It's got little structures that hold the animal to the surface of something. I don't really want to call them roots because then we start thinking plants. But it's got a stem, and you can see at the top, it's got these arms. Now, if you were to study a live version of this, you would see the resemblance it has to the underneath side of a starfish. Because these arms are coated with mucus, and they have specialized structures called tube feet. So if you've ever seen a starfish move, right? A starfish moves by way of tube feet, and the starfish eats by way of tube feet. You guys are going to learn more about starfish later on in the course. You'll have to dissect one. You'll actually just watch a video of it. But you'll be learning plenty about starfish later. But if you were to study what's going on here with these arms, they're sort of feather-like, but they're not feathers. They're coated with mucus that traps the food. And then they have these tube feet that are exactly like the tube feet found on starfish that will move the food ultimately to the mouth. This is the head region is called the calyx right here. The cup-shaped head region is called the calyx. And here's where I would be passing around the calyx I found. 25 years of fossil hunting, and all I find is the stems of crinoids. I've never found a head region before. And I finally found one. It was about half the size of a dime. No, it's very small. So you almost have to look at it under a microscope. It might be if you take a dime, it might be a quarter the size of a dime. Very tiny head region that I found. But I was still proud of myself. It's not, it's one thing to learn these and identify these things in pictures. It's a whole nother thing to go out in the real world and have to identify this stuff. But it's fun. So here you can see a living crinoid. They can still be found today. So crinoids are still present today. They haven't gone extinct, but they were definitely most abundant back in the Paleozoic era. So here you can see the stem. There's the calyx or the head region. So let's look at some pictures. Let's go to the pictures for the crinoids. All right, so we have our fragment of a trilobite there. We got live brachiopods there. That's a bryozoan. Here are the stems. These here are what you find a lot of. Those are the stems of crinoids. Phylum Echinodermata, related to starfish and sand dollars and sea urchins. They are an animal that kind of looks like a plant, but it's not a plant. And so these are a variety of different pieces of stems from crinoids. That's something else. That's something else, something else. That's something else. Here is the calyx. Here is the stem, and there's the head region, the little arms that have the tube feet that move the food. So it's this part up here that would cause you to go, if you looked at it and study it, to go, oh yeah, these are related to starfish.
I had a
So
question.
yes,
In that picture before, where they're all like kind of separated, are they found like encased in rocks, or like can you find them just like on their own? Because they all
both.
look pretty intact.
Yeah, both.
Partially,
You can find
basically.
them very much encased in rocks, but you can also find them on their own. And you say, well, how does that happen? Water erosion. The best time to go hunting, when I like to go out to Caesar's Creek, is after it's rained for like 3 days in a row, because you allow water to erode things away and clean up the sediments and expose the fossils.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I wish we could all go on a field trip to Caesar's Creek because it was just so fun.
Well, it is.
Yeah,
It is.
What are
I've-
those conicular?
I've had as many as 20 of my students out there. We spend 4 hours out there, get there about 10 o'clock and search till about 2. And we have the greatest time. It's not a Sinclair sponsored event because of legal issues. I just say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to be here. If you guys show up, you show up. They don't get extra credit, none of that. They just go because they want to have some fun.
That's
And
awesome.
we've had a lot of fun. In fact, you know, the best place to go, they don't want you to be in. But if you get down in that area, the best place to go is down into the creek area, which you're technically not allowed to be in. Why the
Okay.
creek? Because you got water rushing through there,
Yeah.
and it does the searching for you. So I'm not giving you guys the advice to go to the creek, right? Because you're not allowed to do that. But you just got to be careful. And so the areas that they will allow you to go to are good after it's rained for several days. But if it hasn't rained for a while, then if you're very careful, you get down in the creek area where water's been moving through, you'd be surprised what you can find.
Hmm. What are the like cone shaped, like that one right there?
This one here,
Yeah.
these
So
are
I
horn
find
corals.
those a lot.
Yeah, these are horn corals. We're going to talk about those in just a minute.
Or the one under it.
Here,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a whole group of horn corals.
Oh, okay.
Yep, there's an individual horn coral on its side,
Nice.
and then these are a bunch of the horn corals here. There's the top of it. We'll talk more about those in a minute.
Do you have the names of like the fossils on the slides, or do we just have to like
Well,
figure
I
out
want-
what they
Yeah, I purposely didn't put the names on there because I want you guys to have to figure it out. And
Okay.
on the lab test, you're not going to have the names, of course, right? So that's part of what we're doing now is I'm trying to teach this to you, but then I want you guys to have to work to do it on your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can use pictures from the lab in the lab guide. You can use those to help you. You can also use Google to figure things out. But if you have to, the more you have to figure it out on your own, the longer you'll remember it. Right? So that's why I didn't put the names on there.
Okay.
All right, let me see. Do we have any other? So that's something. Oh, right there. These are crinoid stems right here. Those are crinoid stems right there. And I will admit, my wife is probably found the best crinoid stems, better than anything I've ever found. And when she found them, she pulls up this rock and walks over to me. We were hiking. This is down near the Dayton Country Club. And she hands this to me and she's like, well, what is this? And initially I couldn't tell because there's mud on it. So you wash this stuff off in the creek, and that certainly helps. And when I first looked at it, my first reaction was, oh, it's so sad because this is once again evidence of human pollution, because I thought I was looking at machine parts, right? I thought I was looking at nuts and bolts. The other problem I had when she first picked this up is I'd never seen crinoid stems that big. I mean, the one she just found has crinoid stems that are like at least a nickel size, if not almost to the size of a quarter. Well, my whole life, I'd found crinoid stems that were, you know, a fourth of the size of a dime. So I was used to finding the small ones. In fact, I think you can see a little tiny one. The black pointer's on a little tiny stem right there. That's what I'm used to finding. But so it was funny that initially I didn't know what it was, and then it dawned on me that she found crinoid stems, the best ones, the biggest ones we'd ever found. She has that tendency. She has an eye for this stuff. Oh, I don't think I did this one, did I? Yeah, I don't think we got to this one. So you guys tell me, you have to be careful. What is this?
It looks like coral. But-
Yeah, it's not coral, but it's the
Yeah.
bryozoans. Notice it's got that twig branch-like pattern, right? There's another, sometimes these bryozoans look like pieces of bone. Over here, bryozoan. That's bryozoan. So this is bryozoan. So you have to be careful about that. That's a bryozoan. So that here is the bryozoan. If you were to focus in real closely on that, you'll see that it will look more like this. You would see the little indentations. When you see those, you know you have bryozoan.
Yeah, I have a bunch of those. I just
Yeah.
always kind of
Yeah, so
thought they were
these are
coral.
bryozoans right there. And you're right, it does have some resemblance to coral because of the coral animal builds a little calcium carbonate house for itself too.
Yeah.
That's bryozoan. Oh, we'll go through these all again here in a moment. But what is that? What is this?
Mm.
It's got the little
Bryozoan?
indentations, the little dimples.
Bryozoan?
That's bryozoan. Yep. Here's some bryozoans. We'll come back to these. Oh, right here. These are what?
Crinoids.
Yeah, those are crinoid stems right there. Crinoid stems right there. And oh, look at that. There's the stem and here's the head region. So that's the crinoid calyx. Here's another. There's a stem. Here's the arms. Crinoid calyx. And that's what I found. I actually found one of these, very small one. And here are crinoid stems as well. You can almost get a sense of why I might have thought they were machine parts initially.
The resemblance is remarkable.
Yeah, yeah. These are something else. All right. Questions about the crinoids? From the phylum Echinodermata.
You haven't talked much about how these invertebrates reproduce at all.
Well, that's because we'll do more of that later in the course. Yeah, we have. Chase, thanks for bringing that up. We have an entire chapter on invertebrate zoology, and it is pronounced zoology, not zoology. But we have an entire chapter on that. So thanks for bringing that up. We'll get into all of that eventually. Chapter 33 is all about invertebrates. You'll love that test. You can see in this one image of the you can see, right, that's the image of a live crinoid, echinoderm from the Phytocat, and that's why that you can see why you might be confused that it's a plant, but it is not. All right, questions about crinoids? Now, these crinoids like to eat plankton, and we've brought this up a couple of times, right? We've used the term plankton before, and I want you guys to know what plankton is. I like to think of plankton as kind of, my wife loves to eat, I know this is be a strange analogy, but my wife is a salad person. She eats salads and she throws everything on there, tomatoes, cucumbers, you name it. To me, plankton is kind of like the salad of the ocean. It's got a variety of things. It would be kind of like one of my wife's salads, but then if I'm forced to eat salad, I gotta throw some meat in there. So chop up some turkey or something, some ham, throw it on the salad. That's plankton. Plankton is kind of like the salad of the ocean. It's got a variety of things in there. Plankton has bacteria. It has algae. It has protozoans. It has a type of algae called diatoms. It has dinoflagellates. It has copepods and krill. That's just the short list of what's in plankton. Once again, what's in plankton? There's bacteria. There's the archaea prokaryotes. You have archaea as well in there. There's algae, protozoans, a type of algae called diatoms. There's dinoflagellates. If you're going, but Professor Irby, I know nothing about these creatures. I'll say, you're gonna learn. We have a whole chapter on bacteria and archaea. We have a whole chapter on protists. So we have labs on algae and protozoans, and we'll do labs about, we'll learn about diatoms and dinoflagellates. There's copepods in plankton, and there's krill in plankton. There's a variety of small microscopic things as well as larger things in the plankton. Now, you might say, well, why do you think of it as a salad? Because algae, a lot of this algae that's in there is, it's photosynthetic, and some of it may be green in color. You guys with me? So the green algae is what makes me think of the lettuce, even though algae is not a plant. I know my analogy may not work well, but to me, plankton is like a salad of the ocean. And a lot of things like to eat the plankton. Questions about plankton? All right. Let's go to the cephalopods, phylum Mollusca. And we're going to be looking at fossilized remains of cephalopods, and these guys are related to these creatures right here. Squid, octopuses, chambered nautilus. If there's one thing, what do you guys, what's the one thing you think of when you think of an octopus?
Tentacles.
Yeah.
Legs.
8 legs.
Yeah, the little arms, the little legs. You know what I think about their amazing intelligence. Octopuses are unbelievably bright. They have ways of changing the color of their skin to match, to camouflage themselves from predators, and they're unbelievably bright. If you Google sometimes stories about octopus intelligence, you'll be surprised. So there's all kinds of stories about people who do research on octopuses and other creatures. You know, they might have a lab where they've got their octopuses in a cage, and they might have another spot where there might be some lobsters or something. And during the day, the octopus acts as if, you know, hey, I'm a caged animal, I can't get out, I'm not very bright. But the minute the human leaves the lab for the night, the octopus learns how to disconnect the latch, open up its cage, leaves the cage, and goes around the lab looking for food, and then finds the lobsters that are in their little cage, goes inside that cage, eats the lobster, and then leaves and heads back to its cage and gets back in there before the human comes in the next day. The octopus is aware of what's going on. It's unbelievably conscious of its environment. There are just so many amazing stories about octopuses. And they're not just the only smart ones, right? There's all kinds of intelligent animals out there, guys. The mammals, the whales, and the dolphins. And so we're not the only intelligent form of life on this planet. In fact, the reason we're intelligent is because of our ancestors that were able to survive and reproduce. But there's a variety of life on this planet that is consciously aware of what's going on. And it's quite remarkable. So why do I bring that up? Because in the phylum Mollusca, the cephalopods, the prefix cephalo refers to a concentration of nervous tissue. So that prefix right there, cephalo, refers to cephalization, refers to the fact that many cephalopods have cephalization refers to an increase in the nervous tissue in what we call the central nervous system, basically a brain. Cephalization means an increase in nervous tissue that can form a brain or brain-like structure. And so you can see in the prefix cephalo that these creatures are brighter than you might think. Highly developed nervous tissue in these marine mollusks. All right. What do we want to know about them? Well, we often find these cephalopods have different types of, some of them had different types of shells. And what we find in the fossils record is this arrangement right through here. And you have to be careful about this, because if you're not careful, you might confuse that with crinoid stems. And what you're looking at there, excuse me, let me get some water. What you're looking at here is the fossilized shell of a cephalopod. And I'll show you a variety of these in a little bit. Here you're seeing another right through there is the fossilized shell of a cephalopod. Here's a chambered nautilus. These are still alive today. Nautilus are still alive. Here's an ammonite. And ammonites are no longer with us. Ammonites became extinct 65 million years ago. I'll show you some ammonite fossils. The fossils we'll see will be of ones that look like this, where the shell has been filled in, where the little internal chambers of the shell were filled in and fossilized. We will also look at fossilized ammonites here. Why did I pick the ammonites? Well, because, well, first of all, they're the evidence of evolution, right? Ammonites are on the planet for a certain period of time, ammonites came onto the earth about 240 million years ago and went extinct 65 million years ago after a mass extinction. We'll talk about that mass extinction eventually. It's called the Cretaceous Tertiary Mass Extinction, the KT extinction. And it occurred 65 million years ago and wiped out the ammonites. So they got to live for a little under 200 million years. Why do I also like them a lot? Because one of the pieces of jewelry that I got my wife is an ammonite fossil on a necklace. It cost me 25 bucks and she loves it. I have tried to buy her more expensive jewelry in the past. She's not interested. I tried to buy her $2,000 emerald earrings one time. She said, no, thanks. Ever since then, I've never tried to do that again. And that was back in a time when I didn't have the money to be spending. We were young, we didn't have a whole lot of money, and somehow I saved up some money and I was going to spend $2,000 on these emerald earrings. And just the way to show her how I felt about her. And she said, thank you very much, but no thanks. But I'll show you what these ammonite fossils look like in a moment. But when I paid 25 bucks for an ammonite fossil on a necklace, she loved it. So much for the price of things, right? Now, why? Well, let's go to that. Let's go to the fossils for a moment. Let me show you what these look like. Right there. Those are ammonites, ammonite fossils. In fact, hers looks very similar to that. And you put that on a necklace, 25 bucks, she loved it. What's interesting about the shells of these ammonites is they're made from the same mineral that makes pearls. The same mineral, aragonite. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Aragonite, Aragonite. Aragonite is the mineral which also makes up pearls. So similar mineral here. And she just found these ammonites beautiful and loves the necklace. Ammonites are extinct, as I said before. Oh, right here.
So the ammonites are under the cephalopods?
Ammonites are, yeah, good point, Washburn. Ammonites are a type of cephalopod, yes. From the phylum Mollusca, they are cephalopod, and yes, so right back here these are ammonites. So on a lab test, you could call them ammonites or you could call them cephalopods. But I'll be honest with you, it's going to be multiple choice, and I bet I use the term ammonites because that's what I think of. This is a cephalopod. This is not an ammonite. Here you can see the shell of the cephalopod that got fossilized. Now, admittedly, you're going to have to be careful with these and not confuse them with the crinoid stems. I could see that happening. So be careful. Right through here is the cephalopods. Those are not crinoid stems. Ah, what's that?
Ammonite.
Ammonites. Yep, those are ammonite fossils, also called cephalopods. That's crinoid stems there. That's bryozoans. We'll get to these here. There's a trilobite. What'd we say this is?
Crinoids.
No. These,
Bryozoans.
yeah, bryozoans, yep. There's some more bryozoans. That's bryozoans, bryozoans. There's crinoid stems. What's that?
Ammonite.
Ammonites. And here we go. Here, this is cephalopod right through here. Cephalopods, 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 horn coral, horn corals. We'll get to those in a moment. Now, you might say, how do I tell the difference between cephalopod and crinoid stems? Well, if we go back to the crinoid stems, they're going to have more architecture to them. Look at the little ridges along the crinoid stems and the little hole in the middle. The crinoid stems are going to have more artistic shape to them, if that makes any sense. While the cephalopods are not as architecturally complex. That's cephalopod. Cephalopod. Okay. Cephalopods, cephalopods. So just look at the cephalopod. It's more uniform in its architecture compared to the crinoid stems. Crinoid stems right there. All right. Any questions about cephalopods and the ammonites?
There's one picture I I don't think you went over.
Okay.
Is
Chase, we'll hit them all again in a little bit. Okay. Let me do the horn corals and then we'll roll through these. Okay.
yeah, it's cool.
Let's do the horn corals. All right, check these out. Horn corals from the phylum Cnidaria. Now, that should give us, do these, okay. You guys are going to learn about cnidarians eventually. And cnidarians have their name for these special stinging cells associated with their tentacles. Right here, sea anemones. You guys are familiar with sea anemones. Whoopsie. Okay, don't need that. You guys are familiar with sea anemones, right? Cnidarians. What are some other cnidarians? Jellyfish are cnidarians. They want us to call them jellies. I can't call them jellies. Maybe I will, but I like to still call them jellyfish. Sea anemones are cnidarians. And they have these specialized stinging cells called cninocytes that you guys will learn a lot about eventually in the course. So these horn corals are, in a way, a horn coral is like a little tiny sea anemone that builds a little house for itself. Now, sea anemones, I don't think build these calcium carbonate houses. I'm pretty sure they do not. I picture sea anemone, I don't see any protective house. But these horn corals do. And the reason we call them horn corals is because the house that they make, the little calcium carbonate house, they say the skeleton is made out of calcite. That's another way of saying calcium carbonate. So they make these calcium carbonate houses as well. And the little animal lives in the top of this. So if you look, here's a horn coral there. Here's a couple of horn corals there. The little animal lives right at the top here and builds or secretes this little house. So these horn corals have sac-like bodies with a single opening into their body, surrounded by these tentacles that have these special stinging cells called ctinocytes. Are these horn corals a type of coral? Yeah, it's just these guys are the solitary ones. They're the solitary corals that one little animal will build its little house that looks like the shape of a horn. People will often confuse these with dinosaur teeth. They'll say they found a dinosaur tooth when all they found is a horn coral. So let's take a look at some of these horn corals. All right, here we go. This is not the greatest image, but here's the top portion of the horn coral. It's shaped, it's tapered down at the end. The animal would live right through here. And basically, if you could picture a tiny sea anemone and throw it in the top of this, you'd be real close to what that animal looks like. So that's a horn coral. Here these are horn corals, and the animal again lives in the top portion of this. These are horn corals. Do you see why people can confuse them with dinosaur teeth? Another horn coral there. So we will discuss the phylum Cnidaria later on in the course. We will learn about jellyfish and sea anemones. And so let's go ahead and just roam. We'll begin with the last. There's 42 images here. I will select at least 8, if not 10, maybe 12 images for the lab exam. That's a horn coral. There's 3 horn corals. If I go too fast, you guys stop me. You guys, if you could take notes and say, hey, slide 42. You could list it down here, slide 1 through 42. 42, horn coral. 41, horn coral. Horn corals. Nice picture of horn coral. Again, the animal lives right here. What's that? What is this?
Cephalopod.
Cephalopod, thank you. Cephalopod here. That's a cephalopod as well. What's this?
Ammonites.
Ammonites, which are cephalopods, but I bet if I ask about this, I'll use the term ammonites. Those are ammonites. Crinoid stems. Here's the crinoid calyx, the head region here, the stem there. Let me just yell if I'm going too fast. Crinoid calyx. Phylum Echinodermata, related to starfish. Crinoid stems. What's this?
Bryozoan.
Bryozoans, yeah. Anytime you see things that look like little pieces of like bones, they look like little bones or little pieces of a tree. In fact, over here you got some of the lacy shape through there, and then it looks like the lacy colony got broken up through there. Bryozoan here. The lacy colonies of a bryozoan. These are bryozoans here. Bryozoan there. Brachiopods. Brachiopod. Brachiopods. Brachiopods. What's this?
Trilobite.
Trilobites. Trilobite. trilobites, trilobites. What's that?
Horn coral.
Horn coral. What's this, which I couldn't identify initially on my Permian fossil that I took out of the Zion National Forest?
Bryozoan.
Bryozoan. Crinoids. Ammonites.
Can you go back a little bit?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Bryozoan, slide 17 is a bryozoan. I might have to put that on the lab test just to keep reminding myself of what I found.
What?
What's that? This one. This one. It's going on the lab test. I'm telling you right now. That picture is on the lab test, guaranteed. What is it?
Bryozoan.
Bryozoan. Crinoid stems. Ammonites. Probably got, I'm gonna have to put an ammonite on there just for my wife. She'll want to take the lab test. But we'll see him again. Brachiopods. Brachiopods, there's the eyes, there's the nose. Cute little creature. Trilobites. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. What did I say? Did I
You
call
said
this a brachiopod?
Yeah, it's trilobite.
I was just doing that to test you guys. But be careful, right? Is that a brachiopod?
No.
No.
No, it's curled up like one. Be careful. That is a trilobite. I did that on purpose, by the way. Trilobites. What is that again?
Trilobite.
Trilobites. I might have to put that one on there just to make sure you guys don't confuse it with a brachiopod. Brachiopods. Bryozoans, lacy colony arrangement. Crinoid. Calyx. What's this?
Cephalopod.
Cephalopod.
Cephalopods. Horn corals. That's a horn coral right there. In fact, the reason I grabbed this one is it kind of shows you how it builds it. Just as corals build their, are reef builders and lay down the calcium carbonate layers year after year. You can see how this started here, and this layer then is built there and through here. Kind of gives you the sense of how that thing is built year after year, generation after generation. So what is that?
Horn coral.
Horn coral. Ammonites. Crinoid stems. What's that?
Bryozoan.
Bryozoans. These are not fossils. These are live brachiopods. I might put this on there. I don't know if I will, but this is the kind of thing guys have to be prepared for. If I put this on there and put a pointer right there, what is that structure right inside there?
A lophophore.
A lophophore. And I could ask you what a lophophore does. Is it feeding, reproduction, excretion, mobility, right? What's it for?
Feeding.
Feeding. And then finally right here, what is that?
Trilobite.
Trilobite piece. It's a fragment of trilobite. That probably right there is a little piece of it. That's a piece, but that piece right there is a piece of a trilobite. All right, before I click out of this, are there any other images in here you guys want me to look at? All right, I've covered the content I want to do for the invertebrate fossils. Did I say everything about horn corals? Yes, yes, yes. On a test, could I ask you if horn corals are closely related to sea anemones? Yes or no? Are horn corals related to sea anemones?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. In fact, the little animal, the little horn coral that sits on the top of that thing is very similar to a small sea anemone. All right, I've covered what I want to do. Does anybody have any questions about these images before I click out of here? You guys are going to learn that when I tell you I'm going to put 8 to 12 images on a lab test, I don't forget. If I tell you, you better know the common names, phylum names, animals they're related to, you better do it. All right. Let's open this. We'll open it up for questions about the paleontology lab. Questions about paleontology lab.
So how we're supposed to know about the animals that are related to the
You just have to know the examples that are in the paleontology lab here.
Okay.
So if for a few, we didn't mention examples, but here for the trilobites, we talked about there's examples there, right?
All right, yeah.
For the brachiopods, we didn't mention any examples, but I did tell you that since they have a loaf of 4 and bryozoans have a loaf of 4, those two are related. Okay. So for the crinoids, we talked about here, right there, starfish, and these guys. Okay. That's a pattern. Other questions about the paleontology lab? Do you guys have dinosaur fossils ever been found in Ohio?
No.
No. No dinosaur bones, no footprints, no coprolites. Anybody know what a coprolite is? What's a coprolite? A fancy word for dinosaur feces. Now, were there probably dinosaurs? Might there have been dinosaurs roaming around Ohio at a certain point in time?
Yes.
Yes. Why have we never found the bones or the footprints or the coprolites of these dinosaurs that may have roamed around Ohio?
Because it wasn't covered in water.
Bingo. Because when this is happening, the Ohio wasn't underneath water, and the chances of being fossilized above water are almost non-existent, right? Ohio was above sea level and subject to weathering erosion. And instead of things getting buried and preserved, they were washed away. So, but if you go out to other parts of this country, right, you can find dinosaur bones. And that's something I want to do eventually. Get out there and maybe find some dinosaur stuff. All right, questions about the paleontology lab. Keep in mind what I said earlier. Dayton and Cincinnati are sitting on top of some of the best Ordovician rock exposed on the entire planet. And so we're famous for Ordovician invertebrate animal fossil remains. You guys just don't hear about it, this stuff in the papers. But that's because people have a tendency not to get interested in science, which I'm not sure I understand why. All right, here's what we'll do. We'll now open up. First of all, reminder, I'm going to give you guys Friday off. We're done with the lab. You guys have plenty of videos to work on. Keep in mind, if you have questions, you may email me, you may text me, you may call me. If you're watching a video, and I don't care if this weekend's a holiday, and you have a burning question that you think you need to discuss on the phone with, call me. If I don't answer it, it's not because I'm blowing you off. It's just I'm not near my phone, or Monday I will be doing some family things later on in the evening. But that doesn't mean you can't call me then. But I probably starting about 2 p.m. on Monday, I probably wouldn't, I wouldn't be responding for a while because I'm going to be busy with family stuff on Monday. But you guys can call me, text me, send me an email. I gave you my cell number for a reason. So nothing on Friday. You got Monday off. I'll see some of you guys a week from the day. This is the point where you can sign off unless you have questions. If you have questions, stay on board and let's get rolling.
Did you take the roll call?
I did not. Probably should have. That's a good point. Is everybody off? Stop. Don't sign off yet. I'm still looking for Raul. I'm still looking for a Raul. I can't say the name. Deshpande. Raul Deshpande. Anybody heard of him? If it's a him.
He's usually in class, but he's quiet.
Well, we got a Raul Dev. Raul Dev is been.
Hi. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, Raul. But I'm looking for Raul Deshpande. Anybody? Chase, help me out. You see a Deshpande name anywhere?
I don't see him.
All right. How about John Caracia? Still trying to find him.
I don't see him either.
All right. Well, because eventually I got to turn in attendance records.
Well, 2 people left after you said they could sign off, so I don't know if.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what our fourth. This is our fourth meeting, right? And I still haven't found these guys. So, at some point I'm just going to mark you're not present. If it hurts your financial aid, then you should have been in class and paid attention. Should be, I've tried to get these guys' names. I guess I didn't take it last Wednesday. I took it Friday and I took it Monday. Well, if you guys would, then, wait a second. I got to turn in attendance. Well, they're going to be marked not attending. I got to turn in attendance Tuesday. That's the way it goes. All right. You guys can sign off. But unless you have questions,